Hey, I'm John, and today I'm going to demo and show you Openfort's developer dashboard, which is something we've been working on since December. One of the pain points we found was that while we choose to be API and SDKs first from our development roadmap, the setup and configuration prior to the game's initial stage could be troublesome without a user interface. For this demo, we're going to walk you through the dashboard and show you how powerful it is. I've already created an account to test things out, and this is how it looks like to start. I encourage you to create an account yourself now. Once you log in, on the top right side, we'll see the different projects, and we can start by creating a new project in here. As well, we'll find home, players, asset gas policy, and API keys, which allows us to navigate through the dashboard. To kickstart, I'm going to start creating a player. This player will be just the user ID that will allow us to identify players on the game. But there's nothing attached crypto-wise yet. There's no accounts nor transactions. Once we create a player, next step would be to add an asset. That basically means that we are adding an asset contract into the game that allows us to interact from a game to the smart contract. If we go to the asset tab, we actually see that the asset we created has my name, Joan Alavedra. And when we click at the asset, we actually see the time that it was created, the address, the network, as well as the different functions of that asset. The last step in the process is to mint that asset and transfer it to the player's account. When doing so, we actually are creating an account into the players. So actually, if I go here into the player's activity, I'll be able to see the transaction that I just minted in a few seconds. While still being processed because of the blockchain, we can actually click on it and check the transaction intent. This basically sets up the different attributes that the transaction that we're trying to mint, that the transaction that we intend to do on the blockchain. We see the player, account, policy, as well as the network and the processing time. Once minted, we will see in here that it has already the minted attribute. Another important aspect of Openfort dashboard is that we, every time that we add a smart contract, we can attach to it a gas policy. We see it in here. A gas policy is basically a set of attributes that allows us to define how we are interacting with these smart contracts or asset contracts. In this case, the very first policy that we created when we added the asset contract, tutorial policy has a sponsorship strategy, shows us the strategy that we're following, how much gas we sponsored, and what was the last 10 sponsored transactions that we did. But when we click at it, it allows us to go more in deep into the type of policies and sponsorship strategies that we want to allow, either paying with a stablecoin, network token, ERC20s, as well as specific rate limits or functions that we want to sponsor. So now, if you recall the first minting that we created, we can see already that it has been successful. And by clicking on the transaction intent, we're seeing here that the whole timeline has actually been processed. All these interactions that you've seen here in dashboard can also be reproduced directly through the public API endpoints. One thing to note is that currently we're on test mode, which basically means that all the interactions that we're doing are basically recorded in any of the testnets that we support. Once we toggle this off, we actually will go mainnet and allows us to actually make the same type of interactions on the main nets that we want to add, that being any EVM compatible chains.